What if death is not the end at all? What if in the first second after you die, you discover that nothing has been lost, that your life still exists, whole and complete, woven into the fabric of the cosmos? This is not fantasy. It is the truth hidden inside the very structure of the universe. In this video, I will take you beyond fear, beyond the ticking clock, and show you what really happens in that first second after death. You will see how physics reveals that every moment of your life, your birth, your joys, even your final breath remains part of reality. I will show you why endings are illusions, and how this vision frees you from the terror of time. You will not hear vague promises or blind faith. You will hear the clear reasoning that led me step by step to this truth. I know the fear you carry. You look at death as a wall, the final stop, the moment when all you are vanishes into nothing. You wonder what will remain of you. You wonder what happens to those you love, and you try to push these thoughts away, but they return in silence late at night. Let me tell you this, those fears are born from a false picture of time. Once you see through the illusion, you will understand death does not erase. It only reveals the eternal nature of what already island. Here is what we will explore together. First, I will show you why the idea of vanishing at death is a mistake, and how science itself reveals that every moment of your life endures. Then I will take you through thought experiments that uncover what happens in the instant after your last breath. Finally, we will look at what this means for how you live now, for how you love, how you face fear, and how you understand the mystery of existence itself. Along the way, I will leave questions open because death is not a subject to close. It is a door to deeper wonder. So, let us begin and step together into the mystery of the first second after death. Here is something most people completely miss. The fear of death is not really about pain or even about mystery. The deepest fear is the fear of vanishing, of being erased, of becoming nothing. You imagine the moment your heart stops, the last breath leaves your lungs, and then emptiness. You imagine that all you have ever been is swept into darkness. That picture haunts you, whether you admit it openly or bury it deep inside your thoughts. But what I discovered is that this fear rests not on reality, but on a false picture of time itself. Think about it. From the time you were a child, you have been taught to see life as a line that begins at birth, stretches through the years, and ends at death. You are told that you are moving along this line like a traveler on a road, and so you imagine that when you reach the end, there is nothing beyond it. But here is the problem. That very picture is an illusion. It comes from the idea that time flows, that it carries us forward like a river, sweeping a boat downstream. And if you believe in the river, then you must also believe in the waterfall, the place where everything drops into the void. But the river is not real. There is no flow of time. There is only the structure of space-time in which all events already exist. And if that is true, then death is not a waterfall, and you are not a boat rushing to disappear. Why do we believe in the river at all? Because our senses and our language tell us so. You hear the ticking of a clock, and you think each tick is a piece of your life stolen away. You look in the mirror, see wrinkles form, and think time is draining you. You say things like, "Time flies," "I wasted time," "I ran out of time." Every word reinforces the illusion. But the truth is different. The clock measures motion, not time itself. The mirror shows change, not the passing of some invisible substance. When you say, "I wasted time," what you really mean is that you regret what you chose to do with your moments. Time itself, it was not lost. It never existed in the way you imagine. Let me give you an image. Imagine holding a photo album. You turn a page and see yourself as a child. You turn again and see yourself older. You close the book, and those images disappear from your sight. Do they cease to exist? Of course not. They remain in the album. Your not looking at them does not erase them. Death, too, is like closing the album. It may end your conscious turning of the pages, but it does not erase the pages themselves. They remain in the book of the universe. To fear that you will vanish is like fearing that a photograph vanishes when the book is shut. Even in my own life, I felt the shadow of this fear. When illness came, when war raged, when I looked into the eyes of friends who would not live to see another year, the thought arose, what if everything ends here? But then I remembered what my own theory had shown me, and what the quiet reasoning of physics demanded. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. If that is true, then no moment is ever erased. Not yours, not mine, not those of the people you love. So you see, the fear of vanishing is built on sand. You have been taught to picture time as a river and death as its end. But there is no river, and if there is no river, then there is no end in that sense. Death may close your experience, but it cannot erase your reality. What you are, what you have been, remains as surely as the stars remain in the night sky, even when clouds hide them from your eyes. And here is where our journey must now lead. If death is not erasure, if the fear of vanishing is based on a false picture of time, then what exactly is death? What is that moment we call the end? If not an annihilation to answer this, we must look closer at the illusion of the final moment itself. What I am about to share might seem counterintuitive at first, but it is the natural conclusion of what we have already uncovered. If the fear of times of the parrot death is built on the illusion of time as a river, then the idea of a final moment is built on that same illusion. You are told that death is a line sharp and absolute that divides existence from nothingness. One moment you are here breathing, thinking, loving, and the next moment you are gone. It sounds simple and final, but the simplicity is deceptive. For the universe does not grant us such absolute divisions. Consider what my studies of relativity revealed. There is no universal present, no single now that is shared by everyone everywhere. What seems like the same instant for you is not the same instant for someone moving differently or standing in another place. If even the idea of simultaneity collapses under the weight of science, how can we imagine that there is a single universal last moment when a person dies? To say he died at this precise second, and from that second he no longer exists, is to impose a rigid line where nature has drawn none. For some observers, that event is already in the past. For others, it is still in the future. The so-called final moment is relative, just as every other moment is relative. To help you picture this, let me return to the thought experiment of the train and the lightning. Two bolts strike the train at different ends. To the observer standing still beside the track, they occur at the same time. To the passenger on the train, moving toward one bolt and away from the other, they do not. Each observer has a different truth about when the lightning struck. Now take this principle and apply it to the end of life. One observer may say at this second he is gone. Another, in a different place or frame of motion, will not yet agree. Death is not a universal line across reality. It is a local event interpreted differently depending on where and how you observe. Think also of how you have seen someone pass away. To those at the bedside, it feels like an absolute line crossed. One moment the chest rises and falls, the next it does not. One moment the eyes shine, the next they are still. And yet, in that very moment, memories of the person are alive in the minds of those present. The past conversations, the laughter, the touch of their hand, all continue to exist as real experiences in space-time. Their presence lingers not only in memory, but in the very structure of reality itself. What you call the last moment is only the last breath perceived in one stream of consciousness, not the end of the person's being in the whole universe. Let me put it another way. Imagine watching a long film. Near the end, the protagonist takes his final step, speaks his final word, and lies still. You, the viewer, might say that was his last moment, but the film reel itself contains every frame of his life, childhood, adulthood, and the scene of death, all present together on the strip. Nothing has been lost. The last moment exists side by side with the first. Only your position in the sequence makes it feel final. In the same way, the end of a human life is not an absolute cut, but simply another frame in the reel of space-time. And here lies the deeper truth. Death is not a wall at the end of the road. It is a place on the map, a frame in the reel, a note in the melody. To call it the final moment is to misunderstand the nature of reality. It is final only from the narrow perspective of your conscious journey, not from the perspective of the universe. In the universe, it endures just as all other moments endure. So you see, both the fear of vanishing and the belief in a single final moment are illusions born from the false picture of flowing time. Once you grasp that time is not a river, that moments are not swept away, then you can no longer see death as absolute erasure. If death is not a wall, then what is it? That is the question before us now. To answer it, we must leave behind the idea of flow entirely and step into the deeper vision revealed by relativity. The block universe where birth, life, and death all coexist in the eternal fabric of space-time. Here is something that changed everything for me, and it may change everything for you as well. Once I saw that time is not a river flowing, and that there is no universal last moment. I was forced to ask, if the old picture of time collapses, then what is reality? What takes its place? The answer came through the insight of my teacher Hermann Minkowski, who showed me that space and time are not separate things at all, but woven together into one fabric, space-time. In this fabric, every event of your life, your first cry, your first step, your first love, your last breath, already has its place. They do not come and go, they do not vanish. They are like towns on a great map. You may travel through them in sequence, but they all exist together, waiting, enduring, eternal. Picture yourself standing before such a map. You see cities marked here and there, one to the north, one to the south, one across the sea. Perhaps today you are in one of them. Tomorrow you will travel to another, and the one you left behind seems gone from your experience. Yet the city itself has not vanished. It remains whether or not your feet are walking its streets. In the same way, the moments of your life remain even when you are not conscious of them. The day you were born, the moment you first learned to love, even the moment of your death, all are marked on the cosmic map. They do not wait to be created by your arrival. They are already there, part of the structure of space-time itself. Do you see how this transforms the way we think of death? Death is not the end of the road, not the cliff where the path disappears into nothing. It is simply another town on the map, another place your journey must pass through. You may not return to it once you have gone beyond, but it remains behind you intact, forever a part of the danger, the landscape. The fear that death is annihilation comes from mistaking the journey for the terrain. You are the traveler, yes, but the terrain exists whether you walk upon it or not. Think also of a book resting closed on the table. Inside are hundreds of pages filled with a story. If you open it and begin to read, you may start at the first page and move slowly toward the last. At some point, you will encounter the final chapter. But does the last page cease to exist until you arrive there, Of course not. The whole story is already present. Your reading does not create the pages. It only reveals them to you one by one. Life is such a book. The chapter of your death is already written in the volume of the universe. It is not waiting to be invented at the instant of your passing. It is already part of the text, and just as every chapter remains even after you finish it, so every moment of your life remains in space-time, even when your consciousness has moved beyond it. This realization can bring great peace, for if life is a map, then death is not a void, but a place. If life is a book, then death is not the burning of the last page, but simply the final chapter. Your story does not vanish because you reach its end. It remains bound forever into the great library of the cosmos. Every smile, every word, every act of kindness, every mistake, none are lost. They remain as surely as the towns on a map remain as surely as the pages of a book endure. So when you ask, "What happens in the first second after I die?" the answer begins here. You do not vanish, you do not fall into nothing, you arrive at a place that already exists, a place marked on the eternal map of space-time. Your death is not the end of your reality. It is simply another location in the eternal structure. But of course, this raises another question, one even deeper. If death is a place on the map, does this mean that those we love who have already died are still there? Are their moments still present, still enduring? To understand this, we must look even closer at the block universe and see how death itself becomes endurance rather than loss. Now that you can see death as a place on the map of existence, the next step is to realize something even more profound. Death is not erasure, it is endurance. What you call the end of a life does not remove that life from reality. It only changes your perspective on it. The person you love, whose voice you no longer hear, and whose hand you can no longer hold, has not been deleted from the universe. Their moments remain eternal, secure in space-time. They do not vanish simply because your consciousness has moved beyond them. Think of a photograph. You hold it in your hand, and there before you is the image of a friend smiling, alive, caught forever in the light of that moment. Now in your present, that friend may no longer walk the earth. They may have died years ago. Yet when you look at the photograph, you feel their presence. You know at once that the moment it captured is still real. You are not creating it anew by looking at the picture. You are simply visiting it as one might visit a town on the map. In the block universe, every moment of their life is like that photograph, except not fragile paper, but reality itself. Death does not erase the frame. It remains in the reel of space-time as real as this very instant. When my dear friend Michel Besso died, I felt grief as any man does. The absence struck me, and yet when I wrote to his family, I told them something that came not from comfort, but from the cold, clear reasoning of physics. I said, "Now he has departed this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing for us convinced physicists. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. What I meant was this: Besso had not vanished. He still existed in the structure of space-time just as surely as I did. I could not see him, but his moments had not been erased. They were still inscribed into the eternal map of reality. His endurance was not symbolic or poetic. It was literal. This is why the fear of death can begin to soften when you see clearly, for death is not the tearing away of existence. It is not a bonfire in which the story of your life is consumed. It is only the turning of a page in the cosmic book, and the page you have left behind is not burned, it remains. The love you gave, the words you spoke, the thoughts you carried, all are still there. They endure beyond the reach of your present consciousness. Perhaps you have felt this already without realizing it. When you sit quietly and a memory of someone who has died rises in you, does it not feel alive? Their laughter, their presence, their warmth, they return for a moment. Vivid and undeniable, you may call this memory, but it is more than that. It is your mind brushing against the eternal reality of their existence. You are not inventing them again. You are touching. What still island? So when you ask, what happens in the first second after I die? I die. Part of the answer is this. You become part of that endurance. You do not vanish. You take your place alongside all the other eternal moments of your life, held securely in space-time. Your loved ones remain, and so will you. And yet you may wonder, if all these moments exist eternally, why then do we feel so strongly that life is moving forward, that we are being carried from one instant to another toward the end? If the real already contains every frame, why do we feel as though the story is being projected? This is the next mystery we must face. The illusion of flow, created not by the universe, but by the human mind itself. Here is something that most people never stop to question. If every event of your life already exists in spacetime, if your birth, your joys, your struggles, and even your death are all written into the great fabric of reality, then why does it feel as if life is flowing, as if you are being carried from one moment to the next? Why do you feel the passing of days, the rushing of years, the steady pull toward what you call the end? The answer is both humbling and astonishing. The flow is not in the universe at all. It is in you. It is the way your mind strings together the still frames of reality and creates a story of motion. Consider the cinema. A film reel is made of many photographs, each one fixed and unchanging. Hold it in your hands, and you can see that every frame is already there. The beginning, the middle, the end, they coexist side by side on the strip. Nothing is being created or destroyed. And yet, when the reel is placed in the projector and the light shines through it, the still images flicker past so quickly that your eyes and brain can no longer see them as separate. They blend into motion. A story appears to unfold, though it was already complete before the projector ever began to turn. In the same way, your life is a reel. Every moment is a frame. But your mind, like the projector, creates the illusion that the frames are moving, that you are flowing forward into the future and leaving the past behind. Even the human body shows this principle. Your eyes do not take in a smooth and continuous picture of the world. They capture snapshots, tiny bursts of light and shape that your brain stitches together into a seamless image. You do not notice the gaps because your mind fills them. You do not see the flicker, only the illusion of continuity. The same trick happens with hearing. A melody is not one continuous sound, but a sequence of notes separated by silences. Your mind fills the spaces and gives you music. In both sight and sound, your brain transforms broken fragments into flow. And in the same way, it transforms the eternal frames of spacetime into the feeling of a moving life. This is why you believe time is carrying you forward. You are like the viewer in the cinema, swept away by the story, forgetting that the film is already complete. You cry at the tragedy, you laugh at the comedy, you tremble at the suspense, all because you believe the story is unfolding. But step back, and you see the reel was whole from the beginning. The beginning and the end were always there. The motion was never in the film itself. It was in your perception of it. Now apply this to the question of death. If your life is a reel of frames already fixed in spacetime, then death is one of those frames. It is not the destruction of the reel, not the tearing away of the story. It is simply one part of the film. The reason it feels like a final plunge is because your mind, caught in the illusion of flow, tells you that you are being carried toward it, helpless and bound. But if you see the truth that the real already exists, then death loses its terror. It is not a void waiting to swallow you. It is simply a frame, a scene, a chapter as real and eternal as all the others. This realization demands a new way of thinking. It asks you to separate what the mind feels from what the universe island. The universe is eternal structure. The mind is a storyteller weaving continuity, creating flow. Both are real, but they are not the same. And when you confuse them, you fall into fear. You believe that time is slipping away, that death is rushing toward you. But when you see clearly, you understand. Nothing slips, nothing rushes, nothing vanishes. The frames endure. The real is complete. And yet this insight leaves us with another puzzle, one even harder to grasp. If there is no flowing time, if there are only eternal frames, then what explains change? The candle melts, the leaf falls, the seasons turn, the child grows into the elder. If the real is fixed, how can we speak of change at all? This is where we must go next, into the strange truth that change itself is real. But it does not require a flowing time to explain it. It only requires relationships between frames, between states, between events. Here is the next part of the mystery, and it may unsettle you even more than what we have already uncovered. Change is real, but time is not the thing that causes it. From childhood, you have been told that things change because time passes, that the candle melts because time eats away at it, that you grow older because time carries you forward, that you will one day die because time has run out. But this is not true. Change is not created by time. Change is created by relationships, by the way matter interacts, by the way energy transforms, by the way one state gives way to another. Time is not an actor upon the stage. It is only the backdrop we imagine in order to measure the drama. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a candle burning on the table. You watch the wax pool and the flame flicker, and you say, "Look how time is passing." But what is really happening? The wax is melting because heat from the flame breaks the bonds of its molecules. The flame is flickering because oxygen from the air feeds it unevenly. The candle is shortening because matter is being transformed into gas and light. None of this requires a flowing time. It only requires physical processes unfolding in relation to one another. To say time passes is like saying the ruler stretched the wood. The ruler does not make the wood longer or shorter. It only measures it. In the same way, time does not cause change. It only measures relationships that are already unfolding. Now, apply this to life and death. A child grows into an adult not because time pushes them forward, but because cells divide, bones lengthen, experience accumulates. An old man dies not because time has stolen his breath, but because the body has reached the limit of its processes. The illusion that time is the cause is a trick of language and habit. We say time took her youth, time stole his strength, time claimed their life, but time is not a thief. Time is only the ruler in your hand. It does not act. It does not take. It does not flow. The reality is change, and change is born of relationships. This is why in physics we describe motion not as moving through time, but as change in position relative to something else. A train moves not because time drags it along, but because it changes location compared to the ground beneath it. A planet orbits not because time forces it to, but because it follows the curve of spacetime under the pull of gravity. Even the beating of your heart is not caused by time. It is caused by the rhythm of muscle fibers contracting in response to electrical signals. Time, as you think of it, is nowhere to be found in the causes. It is only the measure you apply afterward. Think of music. A symphony is written all at once on the page. every note from the first to the last is present together. When played, you hear the notes in sequence, and you call that sequence the passage of time. But in truth, the music exists whole, independent of your hearing. The melody does not flow because time pushes it. It flows because your mind strings together the notes as you hear them. The reality is the relationships between notes on the page, fixed and eternal. The illusion is the flow you feel as you listen. And so it is with life and death. The changes you witness, the growth, the decline, the final breath are not the work of a flowing time. They are the unfolding of relationships already inscribed in the fabric of space-time. You may experience them in sequence, but sequence is not flow. Sequence is simply the path of your consciousness through the eternal. Death, then, is not the end of a flow, but the arrival at a frame already fixed in the whole. This understanding may be difficult because the illusion of flow is so powerful. It governs your language, your habits, your fears. But once you see through it, you can begin to separate what is real from what is imagined. Change is real. Relationships are real. Death is real. But the idea of being swept helplessly along a river of time that is not real. That is the story your mind tells you, the projector stitching still frames into motion. And when you free yourself from this story, you free yourself from the terror it creates. For if there is no flow, then there is nothing to lose, nothing slipping away, nothing rushing toward an end. There is only the eternal structure in which every change has its place, every frame endures, and nothing is erased. And so we arrive at the great question: if death does not erase us, if change does not require a flowing time, then how should we live? What does it mean to face death, knowing that every moment is eternal? This is where we must turn now into the final part of our journey, the human meaning of all we have uncovered. Here is where the truth we have uncovered becomes not only a matter of physics and thought, but of the heart. For what good is it to know that time does not flow, that every moment is eternal, that death is not erasure, unless this knowledge frees you from the fear that gnaws at your soul? What matters most is not the abstract idea, but the lived experience, the way this vision transforms how you rise in the morning, how you hold the hand of someone you love, how you face the silence of night when the thought of death presses against you. Let us speak plainly. The fear of death is one of the deepest shadows in human life. It whispers that you are fragile, temporary, that at any instant all you are could be extinguished. It tells you that you are running out of time, that every heartbeat is one step closer to the void. And yet, once you see clearly, once you grasp that this entire picture is based on an illusion, the shadow begins to dissolve. Why? Because fear thrives on the belief that death is nothingness, that it is the destruction of existence itself. But if every moment endures in the structure of spacetime, then nothing is destroyed. Your childhood is still real, though you cannot revisit it. The days you spent in joy or sorrow still exist, woven into the eternal fabric. And when you die, those moments remain. Your death itself is not the vanishing of your being, but simply another eternal event, like your birth or your first breath. To see this is to strip death of its false power. The wall you thought was solid is only mist, and once you see through it, the fear begins to lose its grip. Think of how you speak of time. You say time stole my youth. You say time takes everything away, but time is not a thief. Time does not exist as a force that takes or gives. What you are calling time is only change, and change is only relationships. Your youth is not gone. It remains part of the eternal story. What you call loss is only the movement of your consciousness beyond those frames. They still exist just as surely as the stars still shine when you close your eyes. And if this is true of your past, it is also true of your death. It will remain fixed in the fabric, not as annihilation, but as one more part of the whole. I have felt this truth in my own life, and it gave me peace. When my dear friend Michel Besso died, I did not say that he was lost. I wrote instead that he had simply gone ahead of me into another part of the eternal structure, and that this meant nothing, for the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. His existence was not erased. It endures even if I could not see it. And if this is true for him, it is true for me, and it is true for you. Of course, grief remains. I would never tell you not to grieve, for grief is the price of love, and love is eternal. But grief need not harden into despair, for despair is born of the lie that what you love is gone forever, erased from reality. Once you see that nothing is erased, that all is eternal, grief becomes softer, more like a tribute than a torment. You still ache for what you cannot touch, but you do not need to believe it has vanished. This is freedom to live without the terror of the clock, without the dread of the end. To wake each day not with panic that you are running out of time, but with reverence that every moment you live is already eternal. To face your own death not as a plunge into darkness, but as a frame in the real, a chapter in the book, a town on the map. One life is enough because one life is eternal in its structure. And here another question naturally arises. If death does not erase us, if every moment is eternal, then how should we live now? What does it mean to inhabit this eternal reality while we are conscious of it? What does it mean to live not in fear, but in the eternal now? That is where we must turn next to the final step of this journey. Once fear begins to fall away, once you recognize that death is not erasure, but endurance, a new question takes its place. How should you live? What does it mean to walk through your days knowing that every moment is eternal, that nothing is lost, that all you are and all you love is forever inscribed into the fabric of space-time? To live with this awareness is to step into what I call the eternal now. It is not the same as the passing present that most people speak of, the fleeting second between a past already gone and a future not yet here. The eternal now is the recognition that every moment once lived is never gone, never erased, always part of the whole. And when you awaken to this truth, the way you inhabit the moment before you changes completely. Think of music. A symphony does not truly exist as a stream of notes disappearing into silence. It exists as a whole, written across the page, every measure already there. When you listen, you hear the notes in sequence, and they seem to flow. But each note is eternal within the score. Living in the eternal now is like hearing the music while also knowing the score. You cherish each note, not because you fear it will be lost, but because you know it is eternal. You give yourself more fully to the sound because you see it as woven into the whole. In my own life, I often felt this when walking in nature. A quiet forest path, sunlight filtering through the leaves, the sound of water moving over stone. These moments held me still, as if I had stepped outside of time. The worries of yesterday and the demands of tomorrow dissolved, and I felt only the richness of being alive. At the time, I thought of these moments as rare gifts, brief escapes from the tyranny of the clock. But later I understood they were glimpses of the eternal. Now the reality that every moment is already eternal, whether we recognize it or not. To live in this awareness is to realize that you do not need to chase after hours or cling to them in fear. You only need to awaken to the infinite weight of the moment before you. This awareness also brings responsibility. For if every act endures, then nothing you do is trivial. A word spoken in anger is not a passing thing. It is eternal, inscribed in the structure of reality. A word spoken in kindness is also eternal. To live in the eternal now is to recognize the gravity of every choice. You cannot undo what you do, but you can choose with reverence, knowing that each act matters forever. And far from being a burden, this is a liberation, because it means that your love, your compassion, your creativity, your courage all remain indestructible, as real as the stars. It is curiosity and love that thrive most in this vision. Curiosity because the universe opens itself not as a fleeting stream, but as a vast, mysterious whole that can never be exhausted. Love because when you see that your bonds with others are eternal, you cherish them more deeply. You understand that the moments you share are not lost to the past. They remain in the eternal structure, glowing forever. To live in the eternal now is to live with reverence, to hold lightly the things of the clock, and to hold dearly the things of the heart. So what happens in the first second after you die? You do not vanish. You do not fall into nothing. You join the eternal. Now you take your place among the frames of your life, among the moments of all who have ever lived and ever will live, woven together in the eternal fabric of space-time. Your fear dissolves, your life endures, and the love you carried shines forever. And yet, even as this vision brings peace, another question rises, one that cannot be ignored. If every moment is eternal, if the reel of life is already complete, then what of freedom? What of choice? Do we create our path, or is it already written? This is the next great mystery, the door we must open after this one, and it will take us deeper still into the nature of reality and the meaning of our lives.